I want to welcome you to the Pro Mindset Podcast. The Pro Mindset Podcast is all about diving into the headspace that results in championship performance. High-performing athletes, winners, have this mental flow and have a positive headspace for their performances and success. Join me, Craig Domann, sports attorney and NFL agent, on this podcast. I will interview pro athletes, college athletes, football coaches, and sports personalities. Together, we can discover how you can get in the flow and have your own pro mindset.
And Dr. Mullen says, you got a tough choice to make. You can keep your leg, use a walker or a wheelchair for the rest of your life, or I can amputate your leg and you can use a prosthesis for the rest of your life. And what kind of choice is that?
Can you even remember the emotions going through your mind when that doctor gave you two options, neither of which were good ones?
Yeah, I remember a little bit of the day. I don't remember, I had to go back when I started, doing professional speaking and try to unpack the day, because I used to go over this moment really quickly in my speeches, and people are like, wait a minute, unpack that, wait a minute, what happened? So here's what I remember and what I've had other people help me remember during that time. The first is I was in such tremendous pain. I've never felt pain like that before in my life, right? So I'm just trying to hold on. My heart rate is way high. It's at least 115 beats a minute. It won't come down. My body's just like in shock. And so they're really monitoring me so they don't want me to go into cardiac arrest. So in that moment, when he said that, my male deductive reasoning said, well, I'm in so much pain. Let's just get rid of the leg so it'll get rid of the pain.
Right.
And that's why I made the decision to amputate, right? When we strip everything away, it wasn't some heroic thing. It was just get this leg off so I could get rid of this pain. The humorous thing is that when I woke up from the surgery, I was in more pain than my male deductive reasoning had reasoned, because I had all these phantom pains going on.
But how many times in life do we make the same decision?
Right, yeah.
Right? We make the decision that we think will eliminate the pain.
Right.
It's the right decision lots of times. I'm not questioning your decision whatsoever. I'm just saying the way you say that, it's so true that we just want to get out of our pain.
Right.
Right.
And we do. And whether it's psychological pain or whether it's physical pain, we want to alleviate the pain. And some people turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol, they turn to sex, they turn to whatever it is. It amplifies generally who they believe they are. The pain does. And so we try to alleviate it. And I have a very strong faith even before the accident in Christ. So I was holding on to that, right? I was holding on to the faith that that this was happening for a reason, and I kept believing that. And that's the mindset I kept putting myself and telling myself. But at the same time, it wasn't like it was easy. It was so hard. So I had these wins that began to happen that I could look for. Number one, I was thinking about who John is now. Okay, I'm not going to the Olympic Games. I don't know if I can keep my job in the military. I'm not going to officer candidate school. Can I support my family? Will my wife still stay with me? Will John Jr. still see me as his dad? So all these very egocentric fears were rising up on the inside of me. And my wife, Alice, she was staying at a hotel not too far from the hospital. She should have been notified that I woke up, but no one knew I was awake. All this went on in the night that I woke up at like 11 o'clock in the evening time, and no one's around me. I'm sure she's trying to get some sleep, and she's trying to manage our son and my dad. So at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock the next morning, Dr. Randy Mullins, he calls her and says he just woke up, or he's been up, and he's not doing good, because I was just thinking about all that negative stuff. When you think negatively all the time, you're left for your own dangerous thoughts for an entire night, you can go down pretty fast. And my wife, she comes running over, and I didn't even realize this, but she had just been called by the nursing facility that she was working at back in West Memphis, Arkansas. And the reason we were separated was because I had a non-command sponsorship tour. So I was living in Germany, but TDY again, temporary duty back to the United States. So we couldn't be together because I didn't have command sponsorship for her to be authorized to be over in Germany with me. So we were waiting on it, but it hadn't happened. So she's working this job, and the job has just called her to tell her she's been fired because she's been with me for 3 or 4 days, and they needed her back, or they needed somebody else to do the work that she couldn't do because she was with me. And she kept that from me. She comes over. It takes them 45 minutes to get me out of the chair, or out of the bed, into a wheelchair, wheeled out to an inaccessible playground where I'm parked. And I'm watching my son and my wife play on the swing sets, and I couldn't push myself out of that chair. And it was the first time I felt devalued, dejected, and disabled. And I lost it. I started crying uncontrollably. And that's when Alice comes running over. She puts her arms around me. She said, "What is going on?" And I started articulating to her through my sobs, that she could understand it, all my fears I had the night before. And then she said the words that stopped my downward spiral. She said, you know what, John? We're going to get through this together. It's just our new normal. It's just our new normal. And when she spoke those words, she kind of really baselined my entire existence. John Jr., he jumps off the swing set. He hits the ground, comes running over, saying, "Hey, Dad, you see my big jump, Dad? You see my big jump? You see my big jump, Dad?" And he jumps in between myself and Alice. And I realized in those 20 yards, he had just validated me as his father, and he had created his new normal. And that's what I had to do. And so I was determined, I was dogged determined to not think negatively anymore and begin to surround myself, like those folks at Arkansas, like my inner circle, with people who were not going to allow me to fail. And Alice helped me with it because she wouldn't let anybody who was kind of a little negative talk to me. And when they called to the hospital, she kind of screened the calls, and we only listened to people who were positive. And so now I can talk to people that aren't as positive, but it's because I have such a strong team that they keep me uplifted that I can reach back and help a few other people.
What was your relationship like with your creator during that time? Was it a series of why me, why now? Was it, what's the purpose in this? What was the conversation that you had with the Lord?
Yeah, openness, right? So whatever you need me, or whatever this is happening, I might not be able to see it. I know that you know what's going on. You've already seen what's happening. So therefore, I'm going to be open and available to your leading. That really shifted me. And I'm sure I went through all the stages of grief, right? I'm sure I went through the why me. I'm sure I went through the anger. I just don't remember it as vividly. What I do remember is shifting from the why me to why not me, and trying to understand how I can show up for other individuals as others are showing up for me right now.
A lot of times there's joy in the ashes. There's joy in the pain. What's been the biggest joy for you? And you went on to compete in the Paralympics, and I'll let you share that. But what's been the biggest joy from you from that whole experience in Hays, Kansas on a track running the hurdles?
Well, it actually continues right now. It continues to this day. It's seeing the echoes come back from people's lives into mine. So we usually talk about, in sports, music, food, whatever, we talk about these great experiences that we have, or we drop a stone in the pond and we see the ripples go out from the impacts that we may have made. But I think what's even greater are the echoes that come back. Because mammals, dolphins in the water, or they use sonar, kind of echolocation to know where they are in time and space in the water. They can find where fish are. They can hear very well because the sonar they send out bounces and comes back to them. Same thing with people who are visually impaired or blind. They use echolocation to find out where they are and how big a room is or how small a room is, how many people might be in a room. So they can tell through other senses without having to see who's there. They know by your voice and your texture of your voice who you are. We also, I think, have that, but we don't listen to it as much with people who we have interacted with in life, and they go out and they may share something that we have shared with them, with another person, and that comes back to us through another format. And that gives us the correction or the validation of the path we are on. Case in point, I'm on a train, I'm wearing my shorts, I'm kind of chilled out and checked out. I got my headphones on. I got, maybe 15 minutes of uninterrupted time. So sometimes that's really just precious, right? I'm with another colleague of mine, another double-A amputee. She's a double-A amputee. Was hit by a drunk driver after she served in Honduras for our nation. Comes back to Washington, D.C., gets hit by a drunk driver. Don't drink and drive, people. It impacts people's lives. She's on the train with me. We're going to amputee camp to help a group of young kids. There's a woman who is a United Airlines flight attendant. Not a flight attendant, she's a gate agent. She's on the train with us, and she's talking to my friend Carrie. And she begins telling Carrie this story about this man in the Paralympic Games who had an injury, but he was an Olympic-class athlete, a hurdler, and he decided to have his leg amputated. And Carrie starts tugging on me, like, this woman's talking about your story, dude. And I said, yeah, whatever, because I'm still a little chippy and trying to stay in my own space. Come to find out, she does know about Paralympics. She was saying my story. And we took a little picture, and off I go. 2 years later, I'm walking across the street. I gave her my cell phone number just in case she wanted to, reach out and talk. But I wasn't doing that like, here's my cell phone, like, the Bidens do. And I actually have Hunter Biden's number, right? He actually gave me his number at one point in time. So they actually do that authentically. I was doing it just to kind of get away. I'm just going to be totally honest. And so 2 years later, I'm walking across the street, going to get a hot dog from a veteran vendor I know in Colorado Springs. Phone rings. It's this woman that's on the line. She said, I'm so sorry, you probably don't remember me. We met on the train in Washington Dulles International Airport. I said, oh, yeah, I still remember that. And she said, you gave me your number, but when I got home, I put it in a book I wanted for safekeeping, and I lost it. I lost the book, and so all of a sudden I'm cleaning up. I found your number. I knew it's not if I called you anyway. I said, oh, yeah, cool. And so she says, I wanted to tell you why you made such an impression on me that day and why I wanted to share that story. I said, okay. So then she goes on and she says that when she saw my story on It's a Miracle with host Richard Thomas one night when she was in the hospital with another woman, and both of them were contemplating having a double mastectomy because both of them had cancer. And she said, after seeing your show come on 3 times that night and then seeing you in the Washington Post like a week later, I decided to undergo the operation because I said, if you can have your leg amputated and you were on your way to the Olympic Games, I certainly can do this. And if you can get your life back, I can certainly get my life back. She chose to do it. The other person chose not to do it. The other person unfortunately passed away from breast cancer. And she goes on and says, I owe you my life. I owe you my life. That is an echo. And we should be listening for those instead of being like I was with my headphones on, disengaged, not trying to hear when somebody is authentically trying to reach out to us and pour into our lives in the moment. Not
Amen.
The free throw that we missed or the future that we might be going into, but the moment we are at the line, we need to be open to people. It's the greatest lesson I've learned.
That's outstanding. Well, one of the things that I found, as you live life and you go through lots of different seasons, I see the connectivity that we have with others that I didn't see when I was younger. There are a lot of people that share your story, a lot of people that have faced the same decision that you faced, a lot of people that are living in fear because they've got to make that decision.
Right.
And you can be a lifeline to those people because you chose one way. You chose to save your life. That's the decision you made. You didn't choose to amputate your leg. You chose to save your life.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, you had to learn a new normal, obviously. But it's like now your new normal is helping other people.
Right.
And making an impact on other people that are facing the same dilemma.
Right. Because you're right. And because the new normal, like I said, it's not a destination. The new normal is only our plateau by which we grow. We are always growing. And we always have to, every day has to be a new normal. Why weren't we engaged so much with our families prior to COVID? We're all running around here. We're all on flights. We're all on planes, myself included. And we got those proverbial headphones on. My own world, my own life, my own space. We have to continue to grow and learn and elevate.
So I've got a couple questions for you, John. Yeah. That was powerful stuff. But one of them is when that happened, what can't you get back? And what do you don't care you could ever get back? And what how is your life richer? But how's your life richer? So, because that was a pivot point in your life.
Yeah.
That was a, some people might call it a valley point, but it was more of a pivot point.
Yeah.
And all of us at some point in our life may not be faced with the decision to, hey, you want to amputate your leg or not? But we're all faced with mini decisions. I call them mini decisions.
Sure.
And it might be, are you gonna make a decision that's going to amputate a relationship with someone that will help you be better off and grow and be a better person and possibly achieve more and make a bigger impact? Or you're going to stick with that relationship.
Yeah.
You take it and run.
Yeah, that's the whole thing I talk about now. You said it great. It's the redefining moment, and we can put, and it works in anybody's where anybody has to choose to release or let go or amputate what is holding them back, the pain point that's holding them back, and pivoting around it. I love how you said that, choosing to save my life and not just the leg, right? So that moment of choice is a moment of courage. And here's why I say that. This is where courage actually lives. Courage is not that the fear is not there. It's that you act despite it being there. And that the hope on the other side is greater than the fear that you feel in the moment. The hope on the other side is greater than the fear that you fear in the moment. And so people, like, I was fearful that my wife would leave or my son wouldn't see me as his dad or I'm going to lose my job. But other people, too. Other people were trying to hold me into their box. Other people believing for me what I could or could not do, which was based upon what they believed they could or could not do if they were in my situation. It goes back to the first part of the conversation we're talking about. We often will forecast on other people what they believe they can or cannot do. Is Michael Jordan better than LeBron James? And we go off and we riff because we cannot measure the two. There's no way. Only in mythology we can do it, and it makes for great conversation. But we physically cannot put Michael Jordan in his prime against LeBron James in his prime. We can't do it. It's physically impossible. We can do scenarios. We can do modules. We can do virtual reality, but we can't put the two because they are not 23 and 23 together. Not numbers-wise, but age-wise. and then society, right? Culturally, who have we listened to in culture, in society, that makes us believe our fears in the first place? And once we identify the fear or the stigma, and we kind of identify where it's coming from, usually that's with us, then we need to have the courage to amputate in order to have this rebirth. Because when I realized, and I said before a TEDx talk I did, that had I overcome the amputation of my left leg, I would have my leg back. We often hear that today when things get back to normal. I just can't wait till we get back to a sense of normalcy. We've just been in this too long. I just think it's back to normal. We don't get that back. I don't get my leg back. And I think that's the realization of when people understand that. That's this aha moment of them redefining themselves, and they have to have something different. That foundation of rebuilding is gone. It's a false foundation. It's a false summit. There's a rebirth that happens where you're building upon a new foundation, and you might make some missteps. You might be a toddler again and teetering over, trying to hold on to the coffee table to stand erect. But eventually you'll get strong enough in your new expectancy of hope where you have a resolve about who you are. I'm resolute in who I am. Both of those two athletes, Michael Jordan and LeBron James, are resolute in who they are. They know exactly who they are. And so I'm resolute, I'm resolved, and no more am I going to go back to the opinions of others, other people believing for what I can or cannot do. You need to catch up to where I am, and that equals our liberation. The liberation for us to live in such a way that we are now strong enough to go back and help some other people in that journey to overcome their fears. But make no mistake, that redefining moment, that moment that I had to go through, that many people have to go through, that's not an easy moment because the jump is the jump. There's no book that tells you how to jump. There's no 10 stories, no 5 ways. When you're up on the ropes platform, like when I was at the amputee camp and I'm harnessed in 50 feet above the ground on the ropes course, and I got to make a jump between one disc to the next disc, and I'm terrified to do it, even though I'm harnessed in. And I got all these little tykes running by me. Come on, Mr. Register, you can do it. You can do it. Make the jump, Mr. Register, make the jump. and I'm up there for 20 minutes not making the jump, they can give me every book they want to. I'm still not doing it until I feel I can make the jump. And you said it, some people just don't do it. And if you do not make the jump when you know you have to make the jump and you're not courageous in that moment, the next thing that we do is we have to justify to ourselves and others why we didn't do it. And we start making excuses. And of course, excuses are monuments of nothingness. They build bridges to nowhere. And people who use these tools of incompetence are masters of nothing. We begin to justify. And it's no longer about us. It's about us, how we are going to live for somebody else's life instead of our own.
Well, John, a couple of thoughts popped in my head while I was listening to you, and one of them was, if you amputate, you elevate, you liberate, you graduate, and you grow. Mm-hmm. And then you hit a plateau. And then guess what? You got to do it again.
Got to do it again.
And again.
Plateau to grow.
Right? I think, not everybody has to amputate their leg like you did, but because you did, you have a tremendous platform to make an impact on people because they can see it. Most of our amputations, people can't see it.
Yeah, that's right.
Your son now's got to be in his young 30s. How was your relationship with your son all through the years? Did it impact, or did it make it better, or what was the impact of that?
I think, there's always, father-son relationships are always interesting because he's taught me a tremendous amount. And I'm not sure I appreciate it like in the moments when he was actually teaching me. I think back about it now. We have a great relationship and getting better now as well. But I think it's, when kind of going on to this almost, I hate to even say the word, like celebrity status in the little circle I was in, and having this, it was tough on him because people always started comparing his life to my life. So I was always very conscious about letting him grow in his own space. Like, I don't play basketball. I can use basketball metaphors, but I don't play the game. I am not good at basketball at all. He, on the other hand, is. I mean, he went to Montrose Christian High School for a little bit. Of course, that's where he played. He played against Kevin Durant, KD, OJ Mayo, and some of the others, and they finished up like third in AAU competition. He took his high school team when we moved to Colorado Springs. He took the Harrison Panthers twice to the runner-up in the state championship game. We played with Reggie Jackson on our AAU team. So he's very high-level basketball skill player. And now he's coaching. And he took a team that was like 2-30 and made him a 500 ball club within inside of a year. So he can actually coach the game well. So he understands it from both sides, player and coach, and refereeing. So he refs some games as well. But what the greatest thing that his insight to kind of understand who this kid is, we would go to church, and after church was over with, there was a creek about 100 yards away. And when he was, 3-4 years old, he would want to race me because I was in track and field. So he's like, let's race, Dad, let's race. So he would teeter down and powder down, and we run this 100 yards down to the creek. And then we walk back and we'd have this conversation, and he would say, "Did you let me win, Dad?" I said, "No, you got me fair and square," or I beat you this time. And so we just have these kind of fun little talks. Well, when I had my amputation and I went back to that church when I was on leave, I get out and I'm kind of on my crutch and got this kind of contraption on my leg. I really don't know how to operate. And he asked me again after church, "Hey, Dad," he's almost 6 years old now. He said, let's race to the creek. Let's go down. And I said, I looked at him really painfully. I said, with my new leg, I can't run. And I physically could not run on this leg. I didn't know how to run, didn't know how to operate it, anything. I could walk a little bit, but I couldn't really run. And so I looked at him and I said, son, I can't run down to that creek with you. And so he looked at my leg that was kind of looking funny underneath my pants leg, my trousers. And he looked back up at me and he looked back down at my leg. And he looked back up at me and he says, "Well, Dad, can we just walk down there?" And I realized in that moment that this 6-year-old had just taught me, his dad, that it wasn't about the race. It was about the relationship. And that's the thing with the relationship that we have with our children, that we have with our family members, that I think we're getting back to now in this time of life, that we're discovering that we don't have to be a part of this rat race. We don't have to be a part of chasing something that might not even turn out to be those that won't even attend your funeral. It's more important to be in the relationship with those that are around you that you care about or you say you care about, and develop those to such a degree to leave a legacy in their life. And that's what my son, every time I look at him, reminds me of every single time.
Okay, John, so in kind of wrapping this up.
All right.
You have, your message points are unbelievable. You're a testament to what God created you to be. What would you like to say to the audience in closing to kind of summarize what you've experienced and how that applies to them on a daily or a life basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I try to boil my life, or, how sometimes we have the exercise where you boil your life down to what's the one word? And the one word for me has always been inspiration. And I used to hate the word. I used to just loathe it. And the reason for loathing the word was because when I ran for Arkansas or, ran in the Olympic trials, every time a sports writer came by and I did a feat, set a record or won a race, they would write about me and I would show up in the sports pages. When I made my first Paralympic team as a swimmer, I swam for physical therapy after my injury, made the Paralympic team in '96, and then made the Paralympic track and field team in 2000. Anytime I did a feat, set a record, won a race, I showed up not with a reporter came, which was not a sports reporter, it was a human interest reporter, who then would put me on the human interest page, the Metro section. I'm like, this is a sports story. Why am I not on the sports pages? So, well, sir, you're the inspirational story. So I hated the word inspiration.
Wow.
But what I understand now about the word, to kind of cut it short, is that inspiration really, though, is a driver for us. I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm an inspirational speaker. And the inspiration is because inspiration is the catalyst to motivation. Motivation, in turn, causes actions. Actions lead us to transformational results. And those results, they re-inspire us, or they allow someone else that's watching the process to catch the vision. So for the audience that's out there right now, know that you're an inspiration. Whatever part of life that you're in right now, you are inspiring somebody. Somebody's watching your actions, your motions, your motivations, the words that you are saying, that you're communicating. And are they aligning with the actions that you are doing? Because they're watching you and seeing if you are congruent with what you say in word and in deed. And if the two are aligned, then they're going to follow you to that degree. But if they're not aligned, they're also going to follow you to that degree as well. So we get a chance to choose to live a life that will be an inspirational to others to aspire to greater in their life. And I think what we're finding right now in the United States, we're so polarized, is that our values aren't lining up with what we say. We say one thing, but we are too afraid to amputate what we know to be right because of other people's opinions and what they're going to think about us if we choose to jump to another side. And that is a lack of courage. That's living in fear. That's not courageous. So courage is acting despite the fear, as we talked about earlier. So don't live in fear. Say your truth. And the truth is something that's always going to elevate and help somebody else to grow, not just ourselves, but others also. When you do that, then you can go forth and inspire your world. Go is your command. Forth is your direction. Inspire is your vocation. Because this is personal you. It's your DNA. Only you can do it. And world, it's your sphere of influence. So go forth, inspire your world.
Well said, John. So anyone out there that's listened to this podcast that might want to get in touch with you and have you come speak via Zoom or whatever it might be to their company, how can they find you?
Quick and easy. It's just my name, johnregister.com. johnregister.com. That gets you the whole ball rolling. You can kind of see what we're about. We're changing the website up a little bit, I think, for 2021. And then we have a little group that we have to talk about these things called Amputate Fear. You can just type in amputatefear.com as well. That'll lead you to a page where I think it's up right now. I'll have to go check. And then we have a little Facebook group for that. And then I do a LinkedIn. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, I do a LinkedIn Live every Thursday with a guest. And we talk about hurdlers of adversity, inspirers, and maximizers of pivotal moments.
That sounds awesome. John, I want to thank you for being on Pro Mindset. You've been an awesome guest. I love your story, and I know that when you amputated your leg back in Wichita 8 years ago, when was that?
I think it was 94. So what's that? What's that make it?
26 years ago.
That's 26 years ago.
God had a plan, and I believe that you're executing his plan.
Amen.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Pro Mindset. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. You can follow us on our website, promindsetpodcast.com, or on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Pro Mindset Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you the next time.